Well. We were able to get something done with this interview, but welcome, Pacmancase. It's funny because a lot of people don't know about what happened before the start of the recording. I was like on the road when I noticed that I was late trying to get to the recording, but thankfully you were patient and we were able to get this going. But welcome, Pacmancase. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, we got it done. There's no worries. We're here, and it's time to cheer.
Yeah, it's not like I almost wrecked or anything, but we'll go past that. But yeah, I was actually on the road when I was trying to get done with customers because I pretty much get done with taxiing, and what I try to do is I balance out a lot of the time to get to these interviews. But whenever it is with like any sort of project, that's the one thing that worries me is like getting stuff done on time. Is that usually the same for you and your channel?
Well, I mean, if I planned anything, it would be, but that's I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So I'm surprised I get anything done, to be honest, these days.
Yeah, I can imagine that too. And also, I think you're what, up to 5,000 subscribers at the moment?
I think I'm at 6,500 right now.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's yeah, I just had a couple pretty good videos that hit too, but sometimes everybody says you only need one. So I'm lucky that I've gotten a couple.
Well, but that's still good because a lot of channels that I've seen are slowly getting up to the 1,000 sub mark. But a lot of
Yeah.
those channels have usually not been on YouTube for very long. Have you been on YouTube for a while now? Because I don't remember seeing your channel
Sure.
like around the 2020s or anything like that.
Yeah, no. I started in 2019 is when I actually started the channel, and it was small potatoes. I didn't take anything too seriously. I just knew I wanted to talk about games.
Mhm.
Um and so I think I just hit 3 years. But that's with taking two like 6 month breaks in between. So I feel bad. But I moved like across country and then had like a whole other chaos that happened in the life and depression and all of that stuff that makes you like not want to create content. So I'm happy to be where I'm at, and I've got a pack rat army, is what we call ourselves over on my channel, and it's been a blast, man. It's been awesome.
And it's good to actually have a lot of people supporting your channel along the way. And I know that there's a little bit of delay in the video footage, but that's okay because we can usually edit that in post. But one of the things that is about like making a YouTube community that sometimes can be challenging is always trying to keep up with any of your views, especially when like real life is in the way sometimes. Does it seem like that gets a bit challenging to be able to balance just stuff from real life and over onto your YouTube channel at the same time?
Yeah, man, 100%. I don't know how a lot of creators are able to get daily content out, let alone like twice a week. I shoot for one video a week. I release on Saturdays in the morning, just like your Saturday morning cartoons. I wanted to drop awesome retro gaming content, footage, and nostalgia bombs on Saturday mornings. And throughout the week, I try to work on it whenever I have free time. But I've got a 2 year old and a 5 year old, and a family and friends and social activities and all that other fun stuff. And so, and let alone, even though you're doing a YouTube channel about gaming, actually gaming is almost entirely different than producing content for gaming. So, you want to squeeze yourself some time to actually pick up those sticks to be able to play your Nintendo again, and you're just like, well, I got a bunch of content I have to do. So sometimes you're playing just for the content. So it was wild, man. Producing content around a hobby you already love it's challenging in itself, but just to find time for everything else. So I'm always pushing it though. There's days I don't have it done, and I think that's the worst thing is to like just be so upset about it. And I just have to be like, man, it's just life. It'll be okay. Release it one day later. Explain to your audience what's going on. They understand.
Yeah, it seems like it is. That's the other thing with, like, the type of video that you wanna put together. Have you figured out, like, a formula or a format that you usually go with videos? Like, if you decide to do, like, a Goodwill pickup one day, or if you basically
Yeah.
talk about, like, favorite hidden gems of, like, one console.
Yeah, so each type of video format has a certain formula that kind of naturally progresses when you're trying to storytell, but
Mhm.
you go out and you go game hunting, you just record as much footage as you can, and hopefully you're successful that day. That back, and then kind of just tell the story of what you found as your main narrative, and then kind of just interchange that around, have some fun editing cuts, get your J and your L cuts in there, grab your music that kind of helps set the mood. I do entirely different formatting though when I'm doing my top sixes or my six essentials or games I want to review for older consoles. Those ones are a lot more research driven
Mhm.
on what I'm going to be producing. But I always start with my music first. I don't know if other editors do it the same way, but I will go. I'll decide I want to do top GameCube games, top five, six GameCube games, essentials, and then I will go and I will find music that I feel hits that era, the type of tone that I want in the video, and then I'll actually build off of my soundtracks first. So those are kind of the two ways that I've done and produced, but I don't actually have anything written down as like, I need shot one, I need intro, I need interview one. I don't play it that way. Like I said, I fly a little loose, and so I'm able to cut it together luckily. But sometimes I'm like, oh, it would have been nice if I would have had my shit together when I worked on that episode. Oh,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a lot of people actually make that comment whenever it comes to putting videos together like that, because most of the
yeah.
other time it's usually just getting the video footage edited up and then possibly putting in music to fit the mood later, depending on certain scenes. Does it seem like it does get hard at times to choose certain music that you may think that you've already used before previously, or does it seem like you just use repeated audio at times?
No, I mean, I know a lot of YouTubers or content creators, they actually have kind of a set library they pull from. YouTube has a couple decent libraries that are free, royalty free. But I just use a subscription service that just gives me access to a lot of high production quality music. I'm able to kind of pull it into that zone. Lets me kind of organize through whether I want it more cinematic, whether I want it more, comedic. Maybe I'm looking for ambient sound. So I'll always have some of those things just kind of in the background on either previous videos I've done. But when it really comes to like the main intro stuff that I do, which is kind of what my channel kind of grew up on, um was me being able to take my filmmaking love and get these cool intro B-roll shots of like slow motion controllers and fun things and put that to what I call arena rock music, and just have a kick-ass time about gaming because for me music and sound is 50% of your video. And a lot of
Mhm.
people will skip over that. They think the video footage is all that they need, but sound is huge for people. Music invokes a certain thing. I mean, for me, I don't go to church, but music's my church. So if I listen to a song, that will hit me more than any sermon or any conversation that I could ever have. And I feel like I want to translate that over to YouTube. Now, it's taken me a little while to understand how I'm going to do that, but I've enjoyed going down that path instead. But I've done it for so long that the music doesn't confuse me much anymore. There has been times where I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can't find anything that conveys the video footage that I grabbed, or it just feels like the tempo's wrong. But I think that probably happens to every single person when they're creating content at some point. Yeah.
Especially like figuring out like is with the amount of tone that goes into it, because some music soundtracks that I like to use a lot of the time are some of the remixes, like the chill remixed vibe music, because we usually do video game documentaries on the side, and it's like
Yeah.
with that type of tone, it always like the calm, relaxing sounds while hearing information about video gaming obscurities that not a lot of people know about. Um, but since I was mentioning
Yeah.
about that, for the type of tone, what to you is like your personal favorite tone when making a video?
So I'm a lot more upbeat. I want the pacing of it to go pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Sometimes if I do too long of a cut, that gets a little frustrating. Um, but for me, I will not go very often with like kind of like the ambient house music, or like the lo-fi type of stuff, which I feel like is really popular on channels right now. I'm a lot more rock driven, so you're gonna hear upbeat tempo. You're gonna hear progressive drums. Those are the kind of sounds that I go after. Get some cool guitar riffs in there. Always feel like I can cut to some of that stuff uh, a lot more fun and entertaining as I'm working on that video edit. So that's kind of the tone that I always go for. I will always go for rock and try to keep my beat at like 100 to 130 beats per minute. But even then, like that's when I want to dive into it. Most of the time, if a song just hits me, regardless of what it is, I'll throw it in there. I'll throw country in there, or I'll throw shit, dude. I'll throw opera in there if it works for the video. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, finding video games at the opera house or something like that,
Yeah,
which that I'm
right.
which makes me wonder if there was like actual times that there's people that have found anything video game related, like there was a Super Mario Brothers toy or like a Sonic the Hedgehog game on Sega Genesis.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I mean, especially just we've been doing this hunting thing now, right? Since the OG channel, so we're probably looking at plus years of real game hunting out there, and people find stuff in the weirdest places. It's crazy.
You said how many years was it? It cut out there.
Oh, sorry. I would say that I like as a community, we've been working through retro games and game hunting for like 10 to 15 years. So
Oh yeah.
there's been content made by everybody in weird spots where they're finding the craziest stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing to see like how the community has grown because when I was getting into retro collecting, I remember this was like maybe back in 1998, 99. It was like when I first got my Nintendo 64. And the
Yeah,
weirdest thing was that it was from an antique shop slash pawn shop. I thought that was
yeah,
odd because, it's like Nintendo 64 was like the current hotness that was there aside from PlayStation 1. And I remember seeing NES games, and they were selling them for like 50 cents a piece back then.
right.
And
Yeah. Oh, those
it's
are the days.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing to see how prices are as ridiculous as they are now. When
Yeah.
you started to see like the writing on the wall per se of when game prices are as ridiculous as they ever been, when was that particular year for you when you started to see the prices get to ridiculous amounts?
So, I would say my golden years were anywhere from like 2013 to like 2017. That's when I was finding the best stuff out there. But
Mhm.
right after that, it really hit around 2018. Obviously, COVID and 2019 started the craziest retro gaming trend that anybody could have thought of. I mean, we have titles still to this day that are 6 times the price they were before COVID
Oh yeah.
started. So, I picked up some Wii U games and stuff like that back then. $5 at GameStop. They now go for $300. I mean, it's insane. So yeah, that's probably when I really noticed that this is like, all right, this hobby has just gotten a lot more difficult from a pocketbook standpoint.
So, what about any other stores? Have you shopped at like other video game places where you've seen certain trends change, or does it seem like it's about the same?
So I would say the bubble hasn't burst yet. Now, video game prices have generally came down about 20% across the board. Now,
Mhm.
the heavy hitters and the stuff that during COVID people paid out the ass for, they're not willing to drop the price yet. So it's still kind of holding on, but that means the inventory is not exchanging hands as much right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the prices have dropped. I think people are kind of holding out and hoping that Maybe with the scare of recession and all that stuff and these rumors that this doesn't happen, and then they can kind of get back to game hunting again. But for the most part, I have noticed at the retail stores you're anywhere from $5 to $15 higher than normal, and then
Mhm.
obviously we've got retail vendors like Lukey Games and DK Oldies and stuff like that that are, I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking 30, 50, $80 above asking normally.
Mm.
So I mean, things are still not calmed down yet. So it's going to be a hot minute before that happens. Really, people just have to stop buying games, and then the market will crash. They'll just be like, all right, I'm out. Things are getting too pricey. It's getting stupid pricey. And the graded games changed a lot of things too.
Oh,
So
yeah, they did.
that whole process really kind of put a wrench in game collecting. That's in my personal opinion. I'm not a fan of the graded game stuff, but it definitely
Mhm.
changed the landscape a little bit. So
Yeah, and it's interesting to see like how much that has actually changed in the market because I've seen graded stuff has been around for a while, but I think
yeah.
it was like the scamminess of graded video games really did happen around, I want to say, as soon as the pandemic was starting, because I think
Yeah.
Wada and there was one other one that was doing graded video games was like before 2019. And
Mhm.
comics and cards have done this for like quite a while. But I
Yeah,
think it took,
forever.
yeah, it took a bit before the prices were starting to get to reasonable amounts because the amount of titles that are out there or the amount of books that was around. Because some books
Yeah.
like Action Comics #1 or
Oh, sure,
Amazing,
sure.
I think it's Amazing Fantasy #15 and stuff like that, understandably, because those are like hard books to find out in the wild. Um,
Right.
Now, when it comes to the graded video game stuff, what would you think would be the reasonable level for certain items to be price wise? Is it just basically the same thing as comic books, or is it have to be like some different in their like own category?
Well, I know for me on graded games, the big issue, and you kind of brought this up already, cards and comics, those happened with kind of a gradual and a natural growth.
Mhm.
And the video games, they were inflated within 18 months. So I think that it caught everybody off guard. I think if it was a more gradual growth, people wouldn't be rubbed as wrong. Um, but we also have to kind of go back and like what's worth grading. So, there's times that I'll see and it's like Minecraft on Xbox 360 sealed is graded game. And though that might be rare to find one that is sealed, I don't necessarily find that to be a rare game. Minecraft is one of the
Mhm.
most played, downloaded, and digital games ever. So it doesn't make sense to me to entomb something like that in plastic and put it up on a wall in the first place. I think if you're already a collector, you love it that much. But a lot of people are getting into it for investment purposes and not collecting purposes. And that's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
those are the two sides of the aisle that are uncomfortable with each other right now. It's like, are you into gaming because you want to hopefully have an egg nest down the road? Or are you into gaming because you love it and you just have a bunch of shit that's expensive, which is kind of two different sides. But grading kind of, it was the Lamborghini, right? It was the car collector's Lambo, is
Yeah.
where graded went. It's a rich people's hobby. When you're buying 15,000, $20,000 graded games, I don't think that's even about retro gaming anymore. So it doesn't matter what it is. It could have been a chunk of gold or silver or something like that. It doesn't matter the content. You're just exchanging a good for money at that point. So it's a different animal, man, for sure.
Yeah, and that was the other thing since you mentioned about the Lamborghini of video game collecting. I think the term originally for that was tossed on to Neo Geo collecting. And not just
Oh, for
particularly Neo
sure.
Geo
Yeah.
Pocket Color, but it was just the Neo Geo AES MVS market. And I know that that has
Yep.
gotten ridiculously expensive to collect for. Because I remember that stuff being like a couple $100 for like certain titles, and now those have like tripled up in price. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could just never imagine that. I would still like to get the arcade like 4 slot cabinet, but with like the prices
Oh,
as they are
yeah.
now, I could not see that happening.
Yeah, it would be amazing. I think the Neo Geo though falls under the truly rare category. It was a system and a brand that was not well known in the United States, right? It may have really blown up on the east side across the pond, but for us, it wasn't until a little bit later that people started to develop a passion and a love for it. And by then, the things did not have great print runs because they didn't sell well initially. So and when the consoles came out, I'm pretty sure it was pretty expensive at the get go
Oh
for
yeah, it
some of those
was.
games too. It's not as high there, but I kind of look at it like Sega Saturn or um, geez, I was just talking to Turbo Graphics. Like both of those
Mhm.
to collect for now, those are kind of on the high end no matter what. Whether we had the pandemic or not, those would have been very rare print runs because they didn't do as well of their overall sales. So that type of stuff is kind of always going to happen. But this whole inflated crazy market is literally a Mario game. I mean, it's just Mario, right? Like let's say it's dude, I don't know. Mario on the Game Boy right now. That
Mhm.
should be a $5 game. The Mario and the six rings, or six coins. Like that game shouldn't be $20. It just shouldn't be $20. Like that game should be $5. It should be right alongside with Tetris, like in the value property. But it's not. It's I mean, it freaking was sold with the console, but it's
Mhm.
like it didn't turn into the Duck Hunt. It's now turned into a collectible that's worth $20, and I'm just kind of like, dang man, this whole culture shifted to value aside from the love of the game, and that's kind of where we're at right now, and that's going to have a shift. People will eventually get tired of hunting channels, and they'll get tired of how much stuff costs and how much you can flip stuff for, and you'll get back to people that just want to play the games for the games. But we're not there yet. I think we got a little bit of time before that happens. Before our favorite consoles move to the way of the Atari, where
Oh
you can get
yeah.
almost any game for 50 cents. So it'll happen. It'll happen.
Yeah, I think it is starting to happen with NES right now. There's like
Yeah.
the usual like rare oddities like Flintstones Dinosaur Peak.
Yeah.
I was about to say Space Jam. I don't know why I was thinking Space Jam.
Space Jam. Yeah, Little Samsons and
Yeah, Lil
yeah.
Samson and
Hmm.
like Panic Restaurant, which I sadly
Yeah.
got rid of my copy at Torx this past year.
Oh,
And
really? Yeah.
yeah, and I remember when I first got that, I think it was like still under $200. And when I
That's a
sold
good
it,
deal now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and when I sold it off at the con, it was almost like $1,000. But I just needed like a car
Crazy.
at the time.
Yeah, right? I know. And at the end of the day, the utility things we use on the daily are what's going to supersede the collection. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it definitely is what it is. But on the topic of collecting for systems, because
Yeah.
this was one that I was curious about, and I know that a lot of people have certain traits about why they do this, why they get into collecting in the first place, and they have like one common goal in mind, and that's to collect for a particular system that they enjoy.
Um,
On your channel recently, and we talked a little bit about this before we got to recording, the
yeah.
N64 for you is one of those systems that doesn't really have a whole lot of games on it. I know it's like about almost
Yeah.
400 games or somewhere around that amount that's out there. Is not huge,
Yeah.
but for a system, it's still technically a lot of games to collect. So, why exactly the N64 that you want to go for a full set? Is it mostly because of
He put it over
not a
here.
lot of games, or was it just
You
like
can
a
take a
lot
look
of
through a lot of his
nostalgia for the system that you
N64
have for it?
games. And yeah, so so I just started that N64 score. I just dropped it actually at the time of recording this in January, and did awesome from my channel's perspective, which I think there's a lot of people that are like me where there is nostalgia there. So I will say you have to be born in between like maybe like 80, 82 up to 95 to really like appreciate that system. I think if
Mhm.
you were a kid, 8 years old to 16 years old during that time, like that was your baby. That really hit home for you. It was the first console that me and my cousins played together at the house. We're throwing down on Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Party. Like all of this was such a unique experience that we didn't have access to at the time. Any other console before the Nintendo 64 came stock with only two controller ports. So the party atmosphere was huge. I actually had a Nintendo 64 at my college at the time. And this was the GameCube was out already, so it was kind of back. People are like, you're not going to damage it too hard. The carts pretty much bounce off the freaking ground. So in our back room at college, where we had a little lounge area, there was a Nintendo 64 there, and we would throw down at our lunch breaks in between classes and play Super Smash Brothers. And so I have all of these fond memories of the console, of having the boxes, of opening it during Christmas and really remembering what that feeling was like. So that's where my love for the Nintendo 64 comes from. The reason I started collecting for the Nintendo 64 is is or sorry, the reason I went for a complete set on the Nintendo 64 is
Mhm.
because it was truly one of the most obtainable. So, you know, money is something that people are a lot about. Money is something that people covet, but time for me is kind of just the same in value. If I was going to go after a complete Wii set or PlayStation set or
Mhm.
something like that, we're talking thousands of games, and you'll be up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can pretty much get a complete Nintendo 64 set at this moment for probably about 10,000 bucks.
Oh
So
yeah.
I feel like that is a very attainable system. It's a cool nod to just be like any game that you want to play from that era, pull it off the shelf, put it in. It might be awesome, it might be shit, you don't know, but it's a cool talking point. It's an awesome art piece too. So I love the cartridge designs.
Mhm.
They're hefty. Like I said, they frickin' that you can drop them off a second story building and they'll probably survive, where a lot of the other stuff didn't back in the day. And the artwork on the Nintendo 64 and the color scheme I thought was an awesome design. So in the back of my retro room, I have an entire wall where I have an opportunity to face out my Nintendo 64 games, where normally everybody has to spine everything out on their shelves. And so because I had enough space, I was like, here we go, man. It's all coming together. I've got the games, I've got the love and the passion for the system, I have the nostalgia for it, and I think I'm pretty close to being attainable. And so I started looking at what I had left on the collection, because I was just kind of, if I find it for a good deal, I may pick it up. Once I realized I only had 18 games left to complete the collection, I was like, all right, not only should I do this as a series because I want to do this and go on this journey, I would hope others would love to see what it's like to go on this journey. But I already had knocked out some heavy hitters. So I had Stunt Racer and I had Clay Fighter. So I was like,
Oh,
well,
nice.
in this situation, I wouldn't be, dropping a ridiculous amount of money or just being disappointed all the time because I'm not finding that stuff in the wild. So really, my heavy hitter that I have to get is Super Bowling. And I feel like as a grand finale, if I'm at a convention and I have flipped enough stuff to make this happen in the series, then it's totally worth it. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of where my passion and love for the Nintendo 64 came from, and why I still to this day kind of have that as a hook in my head for what I like.
Now, this also
So,
comes as a big question because you've collected so many of them and you've got a small number left over for the amount to be fully complete. Out of all the
yeah.
ones that you picked up so far, which would you say was the hardest to be able to collect, or like just the amount of time it took
Oh.
to find a title that you thought was going to be easy, but at the end of the day, it was like this took about like a year and a half to be able to attain?
So I'm still not there yet. The game that I have never seen in real life in front of me is bottom of the ninth, MLB, bottom
Hmm.
of the ninth. You expect the game only goes for $12. Now, I could go to eBay. I can go to Amazon and easily pick it up. But that's the fun for me is digging through at a convention, at a thrift store, those types of things to kind of come across that game. And for some reason, the bottom of the ninth have eluded me for 5 years. So I think it's a very strange one. I still need Worms Armageddon, which is roughly a $300 game. It
Oh
might
yeah.
be a little less now. I think that it's dropped in price, but every one that I've ever picked up has had something wrong with it. Either the board was damaged or there was label damage like to the front of it. So I've had that in the collection multiple times, but currently don't have it right now because I want a decent copy of that game. So I'm back to being on the hunt for that one again too.
Now, as far as like easiest to obtain, which would you say would be the one title?
Oh, any Madden game. I mean, literally anytime I need to find Madden like 2000 or Madden 1999, like those two are like they're everywhere. The end of the console I think was Madden or NFL quarterback, one of those two, like 2001 or something like that. That was a little bit harder to find, but any of the sports titles, especially if they were in the middle of the life cycle, because 64 came out in 96, I think, and
Mhm.
then the last couple games they made was like 2001, 2002. That middle area, that 98 to 99, like all those games are just prevalent because that was the main console that everybody was using. So, yeah, any of those sports titles are really easy.
I guess since you brought up sports games, have you ever found the special edition version of NFL Blitz? Because I think that was a Blockbuster exclusive, I think, unless
Yeah.
it was like sold somewhere else. But have you ever been able to find that one out in the wild?
Yeah, so I'm going for a loose set. So I'm not going for a complete in the box. I'm not looking for manuals. So my
Mhm.
collection is a little bit easier than a lot of other people. But yeah, I found NFL Blitz Special Edition multiple times. I actually just found it recently. It was like $250 they were asking, but it was a complete in box, and I was like, I mean, it's nice, but I don't really need it. So
Hmm.
I've come across it a couple times. I come across it often at conventions, but I have seen it at game stores, which it's going to be priced a little bit higher than I want to pay for it. But yeah, I come across that one often. And NFL Blitz was my favorite sports game on the Nintendo 64. I mean, it was an incredible arcade port. Super fun to play that game, and so I'm always on the hunt and the lookout for that. I feel like the label's ingrained in my head because I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I still have only seen that particular game maybe out in the wild like once, but the problem is it
Um,
was at a vendor's booth and they knew what they had, but they were like
right,
they were expecting a lot of money for it, and it was going to be just sitting there cuz nobody would ever pay that at like some
right.
rundown thrift store what do you call it? Flea market, because some
Yeah,
people
the
just
flea
want,
market.
yeah,
Yeah,
some people want to find like a good deal, but at the end of the day, I guess it's just a matter of like right place at the right time.
yeah. It's tough too because some people think they have gold when they don't.
Mhm.
The biggest issue with resellers, whether they're at a flea market or whether they're at a vendor show, is that they just are looking up eBay prices.
Oh yeah.
What the asking price is for things, which is different than the actual sold price. That the actual transactions don't happen as often as people think, but you jump on it and you look at the first page of a game, you're going to see all of these high numbers and then assume that you have gold, and that type of stuff happens a lot. Or a family friend says, hey, listen, George, that Nintendo stuff goes for millions of dollars. Like, don't you sell that for 50 bucks at the garage sale? So like those are the times that you kind of are like, oh, come on, guys. Like, when everyone's like, I can sell it on eBay and make way more money. It's like, okay, do that. Enjoy the shipping costs. Enjoy the customer service when somebody's mad. That alone is a bitch in itself. So I like doing personal like sales. A Facebook group or a friend, or doing trades because it's just a little bit easier.
That's one thing I've always gotten annoyed with whenever people try to sell anything off. is that I guess it's just the part of me where I don't say anything because I don't want to disrespect them. But if I see like they have like a printed out sheet of like a listing on eBay, and then they circle the price of what somebody ridiculously was trying to sell it for, I will just
Yeah.
say it quietly and I will turn back and go to a different yard sale at that point.
Well, it's tough too because I mean, even sold listings, like you want an average of the game because
Mhm.
let's say there was a hot market for a month, 2 months ago, and now the game is not moving anymore. Sure, it sold for $90 back then, but now I bet it's down to more like $60 realistically. So those are so many factors in the game market, or even just being a vendor. So I
Mhm.
get it. It's wild. The Wild West right now with video games.
Yeah, it is. Maybe one day there will be a cooldown period where everybody will be able to get what they want. And there's
Yeah.
that other market of like limited run and super rare, and that's like a completely
Yeah.
different market altogether. And I think I stopped collecting full sets of those maybe about a year ago. But that's mostly because
Yeah.
like just funds being one of the biggest reasons for it. Has that been one of those system type of what is it, collector markets that you wanted to get into, or is it just only certain things you're interested in?
Yeah, no, I'm normally collecting like from the core systems. Now I appreciate companies like this because it does give indie developers a chance to have physical releases. So that's
Hmm.
cool, but when these things first came out, they were truly limited, and now they've turned into companies that just produced based on pre-order. So really,
Oh yeah.
at this point, when the demand's there, then essentially it's not a rare game anymore, which was why it was so special in the first place. So I never jumped on that wagon. I never went after these releases and these crazy collector's editions and those types of things, even though they probably are awesome and they'll hold value later. I guess I just wasn't drawn to it. And I also didn't find it to be anything that I needed, if that made sense. Most of the things that I wanted to collect were either already out there or optional. The things that I would throw exception to would be like the Ninja Turtles, like Shredder's Revenge Special Edition, where there's some
Oh
cool
yeah.
things that I can't find anywhere else. But that then hits my nostalgia because I'm a Turtles fan, or because I'm a Power Rangers fan, or all sorts of stuff like that. Streets of Rage 4 came out, and it's like, yeah, that might be one I'll snag physically because I think that that's going to be worth it for me, because I have so much history of it before. So, yeah, and I want to support indie developers as much as I can. Uh, but a lot of times I want to be able to give them money directly if I can.
Yeah, maybe here's hoping that that does end up happening, because I know that there's some companies that try to do physical copies, but sometimes they do it on places like Kickstarter, because there's
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the company's name because they're doing a Metroidvania, but it's with rats and it's like hand drawn animation, similar in style to like
Oh,
Cuphead.
interesting.
I cannot
Is it?
remember the name of it.
It's an individual company though that's trying to do a
Yes.
physical release.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're it's
Okay.
like their own
Uh,
company was doing it, and I actually had to ask for like a code from them to be able to use that
yeah.
for video purposes because I wanted to review it later.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that name later. Um, but as far as collecting, I know that we already talked a bit about you trying to go for N64. But as
Yeah.
far as like other collecting goals, when you finish off for one system, what is your mindset going into for like let's say if you wanted to go for another console, or is it just only going after individual oddities that interest you most?
I would definitely say that this N64 might be the only complete collection that I'll go after.
Mhm.
Explain the reasons behind the nostalgia and that type of stuff. I would say any other console, I don't really have that same fondness for, but I do have a need and an itch to have exclusives for consoles because I feel that that's what really gives the console its sculpture, right?
Mhm.
When a console comes out, if you can only play it on that console, then that's a really cool game to have. So I actually have two other collections going right now. It's my Xbox exclusives collection, the OG, and then my GameCube exclusives collection. And I only have, I think my Xbox is at 16 games left, and my GameCube is at 13 games left for the exclusive collection. So both of those are really close. But the heavy hitters on the GameCube are going to be a bitch because Go Hyper Grind and all of these crazy GameCube titles, Cubivore, all this stuff is like, it's not even close to the 64. Like
Oh
these
yeah.
things are up like to 800, $1,000, $2,000, like, and I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. That will be something I will dive into, but it will definitely be as time comes. I think the drive for that type of stuff will be harder, knowing it's like that's a $2,000 game that I don't want to put that money down for. And I'm trying to collect those ones complete, so that's a little bit different because the disc and a manual together in your case is something that I've sought after for a long time. I grew up with the PS1, so a huge fan. Metal Gear Solid, the Spyros, Crash Bandicoots, those types of things. But it's all kind of, I would say, surface level for the console. Like I didn't get really in deep, and I'm not a huge RPG fan, so those aren't things that I'm gonna really be after. If you come into my game room, you're not gonna see that type of stuff in there as much. Fighting game fan, action adventure platformer, that was all kind of my jam ever since I was a little kid. So I've not really deferred from it much.
I didn't get the chance to see your fighting game video that you put out.
Oh
as
yeah.
as far as like an obscure fighting game, what to you would be one that you would recommend a lot of people?
Oh man, Rival Schools is awesome. If
Hmm.
people haven't gotten a chance to play that, that's really really cool. I always go back to the Bloody Roar series because I feel like it gets overshadowed by the Tekkens and the Street Fighters and the Mortal Kombats. And the Bloody Roar series like had this amazing heyday in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was such a cool mechanic for you to be able to transform into a beast. You have anywhere from 8 to 10 characters. It started on the PS1. I think the last game they made was Primal Fury on the GameCube.
Oh
But I
yeah.
would recommend that almost exclusively as one of my favorite fighting games of all time. Bloody Roar is one I would put on that list.
Trying to think of the exact one because yeah, Bloody Roar Primal Fury on GameCube was the one that they had, and then I think they basically re-released it not that long after on the Xbox, and I think that it was Bloody Roar Extreme.
Stream.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and
Yep.
the only slight difference on it is that it's a little bit graphically better, but they changed the
Yeah.
cutscenes to CGI. But
Yeah, it's really
yeah,
strange. I saw a comparison of both of them side by side, and it was interesting for them to put that much effort into technically a port over to the Xbox.
yeah, I didn't understand it either, but that's kind of why
Yeah.
that I I don't know, I personally like the GameCube version more just because of the anime cutscenes cuz at the time
Yeah.
I was like really into Tanami and it was like I had to get my anime
Yeah.
fix somehow. And when I picked up
Yeah.
Bloody Roar at I think it was Walmart and I also got Smash Brothers Melee for the GameCube and this was like a birthday present.
Nice.
And I
Yeah.
remember putting it up, and you see the intro, and it's like all the characters, and you get to see like all the stuff that they do. But yeah, that was one of my
Yeah.
favorite things, and you get to go after unlocking each individual ending and just like rewatching it again. But no
Yeah.
voice acting
That's
aside
cool.
from the fight scenes.
Yeah, I know that type of stuff was interesting too. And it didn't. I feel like the series didn't get a chance to develop the characters very well,
Oh
as
yeah.
much as I would have wanted. I would have loved to have like a full film out of that. That would have been incredible because the animated Street Fighter movie that they made in the '90s is still one of my favorite. It's absolutely incredible, and I would have loved to get something like that on Bloody Roar as well.
Yeah, I can't say the same about the other fighting game animation adaptations that they got, because the Tekken one wasn't that great, Fatal Fury was
Yeah.
fine, but the story was a little bit all over the place. And
Yeah.
there's like some other ones that I know. Shido Blade, I think, had an anime adaptation.
Oh, yeah, I don't know
Remember?
if I've ever seen that one, but I think you're right, or something similar to it.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that, yeah, I would love to see some more modern video game adaptations into movies or something
Yeah.
animated. But speaking of which, the Super Mario Brothers movie, I know that that has a lot of people
Yeah.
talking. And is that one that you're interested in checking out when it comes out?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm a Mario Brothers fan just like anybody else. I grew up on that old cartoon, with the awesome cutscenes, hooked on the plumbers, man. And so, like, for me, it's more of a nostalgia thing than just like excited about Mario to this day. Cause I'm not a huge Mario collector. So,
Mhm.
I don't go after any of the special edition Mario stuff. I don't have a lot of plushes, I don't have a lot of figures and that type of stuff of Mario, but I feel like they've never been able to really produce an amazing Mario film, and this will probably be the closest that we ever get to something super solid. Now, you're going to have the haters out there because they just love to hate the voice
Mhm.
acting and the choices that they did for it. It is what it is, and hopefully, it doesn't deter you from the movie. But from what I've seen from all of the trailers, I'm excited for it. I think that they're taking every aspect of our love for Mario over the years, whether it's Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, platforming, Mario games, and they're all putting it in there in some shape or form. So I feel like that nod to the fans is really what that movie's going to be for. So that's why I want to go see it.
And it definitely looks like it's going to hopefully surpass expectations. And if there's
Yeah.
one thing from it that you are interested to see how they basically perform it or like how they showcase it off to the audience, what part of it, and as far as like things you're looking forward to seeing, would you say is one that to be able to look out for?
So I know, I mean, I said earlier on in the podcast that I was a huge fan of Smash Brothers, right? We had Smash Brothers tournaments. So when I
Mhm.
see Mario on the scaffolding and he's like going to punch Donkey Kong and he just like slaps him down and just like hits his face for a while, that's the type of stuff I was like, yeah, man, like how are they gonna do a Smash Brothers call out? Like, what are they gonna do for that? So I'm excited for that type of stuff. And the Mario Kart caught my eye too, because at the end of the last trailer, they're on Rainbow Road and I don't know why Mario is stuck in a Mario Kart, right? So we kind of got to figure out why he has to race in the first place. But it sounds like he has to do all these trials anyway. For some reason, when he's training or whatever with Peach. So I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think both of those things, I'm going to definitely love to look out for that. And I'm a huge Luigi fan, so I'd like to see what they're going to do about Luigi's Mansion, like how they're going
Hmm.
to throw some of those fun callbacks into as well.
Yeah, it does seem like that they've threw in like so many different Mario references. I think the only thing that they didn't tease is like any of the Mario sports games that are in there. We just only saw,
Yeah.
yeah, references to Smash Bros, Mario Kart, Luigi's Mansion, and then like the basic Mario Bros games, which I thought that that was neat that they threw in the obstacle course bit where he was just like going to train and get ready to fight against
Right.
Bowser.
Yeah, I think that if they did like some callbacks to like the Mario Party games, maybe, I don't know, if there was like a joke that like about the joystick, right? Because at the end of
Hmm.
the day, it's like we've controlled Mario throughout these years, right? Like the audience is the person that has the hand on the D-pad and the joystick. So it would be really cool if there was like a fourth wall break about that.
Hmm.
That would be really neat. If I see anything like that, that'd be cool.
Okay, well, I guess the only other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm actually excited about the movie coming out too. So the other thing is, since you brought up co-op, have you ever gotten your wife to do anything video gaming related with you? Because I know that she has to put up
uh,
with you making video content, but as far as like interacting with video games, has she ever gotten involved with that?
Yeah, so she's not a gamer at heart. There are things that she's done and enjoyed.
Mhm.
It's funny too because Retro Rick came to my house and did a game room tour, and we were hanging out. And my wife is seen in the background a little bit, and she's just kind of like staring at us, and like it's total meme worthy stuff, right? Where she's just like, "All right, little boys, when you're done with your games, come up and have dinner." like, um, but that's not really her style, dude. She totally supports the YouTube and me having this fun hobby. But we have sat down and played some games together before, and more recently we played A Way Out. Did you ever play that one?
Oh yeah, the co-op game, the one with like split
Yeah,
screens. I think I actually have
yeah. So
not.
it's split screen. It's awesome. So it's two different characters. They're both stuck in prison for different reasons, and you have to help each other get out. And each person, the game has to be played as a co-op game. We played through that. We loved it. We're currently working on It Takes Two. That's a awesome co-op game as well. Developed by the same people too. And then another game that we always will play together is She Loves Overcooked. As
Oh,
frustrated as
nice.
it is, that is a blast game. Also to just play with friends, have them come over, and everybody just is chaos in the kitchen. But that's another game that she'll play with me. And then sometimes we'll throw down on Tetris. So we have actually Tetris 99 on the Switch. If you start your lobby at the same time, it actually looks for people sometimes that are close to regions. So we've been in the same lobbies before playing, but we're both huge Tetris fans, and sometimes even if we're not playing co-op, we'll throw down on some of the new Tetris titles. So when Tetris Effect came out and you can play it on VR, we were kind of going back and forth on that one because it's just a fun immersive experience. So yeah, those are some things that she's actually done, and I'm really appreciative that she even gives me time to play some of that stuff. So she could easily not be interested at all, but she definitely will find things every now and again. She's not as much of a fan of the retro games as
Mhm.
she is the modern games. So we're definitely played those ones together.
That's good to actually have her on hand, because that's one thing about a relationship is just understanding that it's like it's your thing, but it's not really hers, but she understands why you get into it. But
Uh,
that also transitions into another thing that you put out. I think it was recently or not that long
mhm.
ago, but
Yeah.
the red PSP that
Mm,
I have to
yeah.
ask about this because I know that you regretted selling it and you were explaining this in your video. But
Yeah.
how often did she have to hear this that you regretted getting rid of it to the point of she had to
Oh.
go and get you a brand new one?
Yeah, I probably brought it up over 100 times with her, just in various videos or just talking. I'm like, oh man, I'm really, and I'm a huge, huge God of War fan. The moment that game came out on the PS two, I played the shit out of those titles. I thought it was such a cool story. I've always been a fan of mythology. So like I
Mhm.
knew all the characters and I felt like there was like these connections. Kratos was awesome. So when I got that PSP, the two PSP games that came out for God of War, they're okay. They're fun in itself. But that PSP, for some reason, was like that collector's edition Kratos PSP was one that it was like the first real handheld that I had owned. So when I was younger, I never had a Game Boy. I did have a Game Gear, but it got stolen, and so I kind of lost out on really being able to enjoy those libraries. And then I think I had a Game Boy Pocket. I never got into the Advanced or the SP, and even the DS. I really wasn't there. So when the
Mhm.
PSP came out, it was the first one that I really wanted to jump on the bandwagon for, and I knew I was a fan of God of War. Switched it, so I love this. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And actually, she's just kind of like, I think in the back of her head 2 years ago, she was like, I know what I'm gonna get him, but she's been on the hunt herself for a really good one in good condition. So she's been looking for a long time, and so when we had our anniversary and she presented that with me, I knew that it was a really thoughtful gift, and it's one that I'm stoked to have it back in the collection. I've wanted that one for a long time, so it's awesome.
Well, since you're playing with it again, what out of your PSP collection, if you actually have like a decent amount, are you currently playing or are you still trying to finish playing at the moment?
So there's a couple games that are kind of unique to the system. So there's a game called Patapon. I don't know if you've played it. It's a rhythm game.
Oh yeah.
I found, yeah, right. I found that type of stuff to be really interesting. The PSP was still just a controller with a screen in it, so there's not a whole lot. There's no features like the Vita had, or touchscreen, or anything wild from it. And I never got into the UMDs. I had a couple movies back in the day, but I was, I primarily just used it to game. And the games that I went back for, if I wasn't already playing God of War or Crisis Core, those types of things on the system, dude, I love a game called Pursuit Force. Have you played this game?
Pursuit Force is the not necessarily racing, but you're like driving a vehicle and you're jumping over to other
Uh,
vehicles, I think.
Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
it's a great game. You have to jump back and forth to take down these bad guys. And I think they made two games, if I'm not mistaken. I think I forget what the second one's called, but the PSP has a lot of unique titles like that. So that's what I'd like to find in the library, is when I'm able to like go back. Same thing happened with Gravity Rush on the Vita. Like, I was like, man, how would I ever have missed this game? Like, this is incredible. So I played the remastered and then went back to go get the game on Vita because I missed it. So
Mhm.
the PSP and the library on the PSP is super vast. Like, there's a bunch of crazy games on that one. There's a game called Infected that I think is really fun. I used to use that game exclusively, or that system exclusively, um, as my compilation. So if I ever wanted to play like the Capcom compilations, or Namco's, or Midways, all of that stuff, I went and got all those collections before modding was a big deal, right? Before you
Oh
were able
yeah.
to basically do whatever you wanted to. But yeah, so yeah, there's some fondness there, and to have that one is awesome.
Now, let's see. As far as like compilations, which one would you say is like one of your other favorite compilation games on the system?
Oh, I mean, like legit, the Capcom compilation was one that I went to often. It had a lot of the OG Street Fighter games on it. It had, I want to say there were some Mega Mans that were on there too.
Mhm.
Namco had one as well, especially if you're a Pac-Man fan. So I remember throwing down on those quite often, enjoying that quite a bit. But no, there was a couple Capcom ones that I didn't want to get rid of. Like, I loved playing that. I'm a big Street Fighter fan. I've loved Street Fighter forever. Being able
Mhm.
to play that handheld, I thought was awesome. So those were a couple that I wanted to replace when I sold my whole collection for. And what's funny is, when I lost that God of War PSP, I sold it for a 2DS so I could play Mario Kart 7, and I regretted every moment of it,
Oh
every
yeah.
single moment of it, because I finished Mario Kart and I put the console down and I was like, and I don't have that PSP anymore. And I had like, I'm pretty sure it was like 40 games that I sold with it. That was my biggest
Oh.
regret. Like, that was a big one. That's a big one for sure.
Well, it looks like we got a pretty decent amount out of this interview, but we're gonna go
Yeah,
ahead and get to the final part of this interview. And it's
sure.
one that we haven't done in a while, but it is called the 5 count. And for anybody that is new, who has never ever heard of this segment before, it basically is the person we're interviewing, and they give off 5 different names of content creators that they are following that they recommend highly that you should actually watch or check out. So feel free to take it away.
Sure, man. Some of you guys have probably heard a lot of these people, just like if you're not a content creator and you just consume YouTube because you like the content. I do the same thing on various creators too. But first, I need to shout out Retro Rivals. These
Mhm.
guys are awesome. They're up from Canada, husband and wife team. They make rad content. I've always enjoyed Jen and Scott's banter back and forth. They're big beer fans. They got a tap in their house, in their game room, and they work hard at their content. So definitely Jen and Scott, Retro Rivals is totally worth it. Square Pegs Jay over there, I got to give a shout out. He has been busting his butt. His content is always fun, energetic, exciting. He's got a history in game development back in the day, and so definitely got to give Jay some love. Also, I want to give a shout out to Retro Ryan. If you have not checked out Retro Ryan, Dude, this guy is awesome. He's ahead of the curve. He's treated his YouTube channel for the longest time like a nostalgia network television show. So you go on there, he's going to have OG commercials of toys and games that you loved, and then segments where he talks to people. His TikTok is blowing up right now as he goes through stuff, but that is a rad channel, Retro Ryan. Um, also, yeah, it's dude, he's awesome, and YouTube's tough because sometimes YouTube will hold you down a little bit. And Ryan's channel struggled to grow because I think that it was just people just didn't understand where he was. Like he was super advanced in what his process was and what he was trying to attempt, and I loved it. I love jumping into his stuff all the time. I'm gonna go with it. This is a giant creator. If you don't know him, but Kevin Kenson. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they've hit 1 million subs yet or not, but if you want good game content, good game news, as well as like aesthetic shots, I would say Kevin Kenson is kind of the top dog right now. You know, you've got a lot of content creators that are out there, they're famous for being famous, but this channel puts in a lot of work. And then I also want to say on the smaller end for a channel that puts in a lot of work is Lightsaber Samurai.
Hmm.
He's a teacher, you know, for his day job, and then he comes back. He has a wonderful aesthetic on his channel, a lot of passion around what he wants to do. But yeah, dude, that's where I would put my 5 right now that I would ask people to go check out. I could probably list another 30, but that's where I'll kind of end it for now.
That's okay. So we could probably use those for maybe the next time we do like a follow up. And I know that I said that
Yeah.
a bunch of times with all the other people that we've had on before. But thank you very much for coming on the show. I know
Yeah.
that I was worried that we were going to have to reschedule this and then something else would have to happen because
I
I try to do what I can to follow up with any person I have on the show. But it was a pleasure to have you on, Pac-Man.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I know a couple of my friends have done the podcast too, and you got a good thing going on, so I'm happy to be part of it.
And we can add this one onto the list. I think this is we're about one more away from 20 recordings so far. But
Ooh,
once
there you
again,
go.
thank you very much for coming on, and maybe somewhere down the line we'll have to do a follow-up with you.
Oh, sounds good, man. Well, I definitely see you in the comments. Come check out the Retro Wolf podcast if you guys haven't as well.
Yes, and for anybody else that's watching, you can follow this man over on YouTube, over at youtube.com/ at Pacmancase. Or you can find him on Instagram at Pacmancase, or anywhere else that you want to mention about your socials.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You can come check us out. I also have my own podcast called The Real Awkward Podcast. That's REEL. We talk about movies and movie nostalgia over there with a little bit of games and pop culture snuck into it. But you'll always find me on some social platform. I'll be around.
And that's a good way to end it off. But once again, thank you very much again for coming on for the recording. It was a pleasure to have you on, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.